Hi, we are going to jump into assessment and data in the ELAR classroom, which is our focus of learning for this month. I want to point out to you that the Padlet is going to be a space for you to process and ask questions as we're going today. And here is the bit.ly. I would go ahead and jot that down or copy and paste it so you can have access to the slideshow. And obviously, when you see the play button, that means hit the play for the video. And I know you've already done that or you wouldn't hear me. But if we go ahead and hit the Padlet, I want to make sure that we divide it up into elementary, junior high, and high school. So we're basically have two main parts and then a wrap up for today. So in the first part, we're going to be looking at ELAR, I can't say that well, assessments and programs. So questions, connections, comments as you're going, if you will just click and add your comment. And if you're not in Padlet, your name won't show up. So go ahead and jot your name down or your school, because we're going to use this to gather information for follow-up. So it'd be super helpful. Okay, I don't need to keep that there. And so you'll go under your category. And then at one point we'll have, you'll be directed back here to answer this question. And then we'll go into part 2. Okay, so let's move on. So data and assessments in ELAR, I know there's a lot of assessment talk this year and new terms and new acronyms, and it's a crazy year because of COVID, and that's very real. And I want to pause a second and just acknowledge that and say thank you, thank you, thank you for supporting teachers on your campus, because this is hard work at normal times. And now in the middle of quarantining and virtual and face-to-face and co-seating, it's even more difficult and the stress levels are high. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you and thank your teachers for all that they're doing. So we're going to try to make some meaning of all the things that are going on and really go back to our RISD instructional model that is that I do, we do, you do in a workshop model. How do we use all these assessments? What's the point of them? And how can we really have them as a dynamic partner along with the programs when there's programs attached to leverage that literacy growth in our classrooms? So here are our learning outcomes for today. Understand the purpose of the different assessments and programs and their role in improving student learning, and also actually describe and understand how teacher reflection on practice relates to improvement of Tier 1 instruction. Specifically, the QSAs we'll look at today and a little map example as well, but it can be done with anything, but our focus will be looking at this through this lens. So at this point, I want you to pause the video and then click here, and it will take you to a self-assessment about some of the programs and assessments we have in language arts. And when you are done, go ahead and come back and resume the video. Okay, great. I'm glad you did that. Now we're going to look into the purpose of these. What's the purpose of each of the following assessments? QSAs, PAs, MAP, IXL, diagnostic, TOLs. I know you just reflected on that in that self-assessment, so let's look. This is a bridge map that helps shows the purpose of each assessment type. So it is read from top to bottom. So MAP growth is designed to measure reading or math growth beginning of the year to middle of the year to end of the year. A quarterly summative assessment is designed to measure mastery of essential standards from the previous 9 weeks or 10 weeks or 11 weeks. It's around the 9-week mark. A common formative assessment is designed to measure identified mastery or progressive learning of essential standards within a current unit that informs instruction, and so forth and so on. It keeps on reading like that. So the IXL diagnostic, both the initial and ongoing, is designed to measure current performance on grade level TEKS. Demonstration of learning is designed to measure learning tied to the mini lessons learning objective through that daily check, which is typically in the readers and writers notebook. So the purpose is different about how many times you do the assessment and the purpose of what it's measuring. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to jump into IXL for just a minute because I want to make sure you have enough information on this to really support on your campus. So if you click on the IXL icon, that's going to take you to a learning resource, a notebook that the math team started, then I added to, that has all kinds of links for learning about IXL. So make sure you check that out. But I want to make sure you understand that there's an initial diagnostic, an ongoing diagnostic, and then there's this independent skills practice. The initial is, like I said a minute ago, grade levels, TEKS performance, and the initial creates a customized learning path, and it takes about 45 to 50 minutes. And we never expect you to do that at one sitting. It should be broken up over 3 to 4 days at about 10 to 15 minute intervals, depending on how many days. This is super important that you do if you haven't done already. And so that's something that we're going to ask that you facilitate at your campus. The ongoing diagnostic, just to be aware, is it makes it dynamic. So you don't just get a diagnostic that's stuck from November 12th, 2020, but every week or two, the kids will take about a 10 to 15 minute diagnostic that will update their progress. So it is constantly adjusting to customize recommendations for the students. And then there's independent skills practice. We can pick that out by the TEKS themselves, the unit essential standards. You can make a plan, or the customized that's through the diagnostic. And there's even customized learning paths through some of our resources, and we'll look at that in just a moment. So first, I want to show you, if you haven't done this already, math has done this more at your campus, so really make sure that you lean on your math people if you're not familiar yet, but you're really going to need to learn IXL. The diagnostic is what then we need our students to do. So when the teachers are looking at a report, it's going to say individual student levels of recommendations and have this button to click for the recommendations. But I took a screenshot of a class. These are just 3 students that cut their names off. And you can see these numbers and 2 lines and keep going. So what they stand for is you get an overall English language arts level and an overall reading level. The English language arts deals with grammar and mechanics and the writing pieces, whereas this is the reading. The way this reads, looking here, this student has not finished the diagnostic, because when the student finishes, this bar narrows to a dot. Right now, the student is performing at a 790, which means overall reading level is what we'd expect of a 7th grade student in their 9th month of school, or between that and a 9th grade student in their 6th month of school. That's how that reads. So if you skip on down here, you can see, again, what I was mentioning, the overall language arts and overall reading. This is one student. Notice this one is about to pinpoint. So as a teacher, when they look at this, they can tell if their students have their accurate diagnostic information by these scores here. So that's what it looks like. Now, if you click that button about the recommended plan, you'll see it will give, based on what the students are doing on the diagnostic, this student needed to use context, identify the meaning of words, and determine the theme of short stories, had trouble with that. And you see on the vocab, use words accurately and precisely, and so forth and so on. And then we'll give a writing strategies recommendation, and then a grammar and mechanics recommendation. So that's what's great about it, is the diagnostic informs a customized path, and it will make recommendations on the student's dashboard as soon as they sign on. You can, of course, assign some things that will pop up as well. I'm bringing this up because, well, I'll go back to this. This is super important because with the co-seating arrangement and the virtual and the face-to-face, it's going to be really important that we have some data that's objective, that's ongoing, which is super nice. It's also going to be important before your students take the diagnostic that you tell them to take it seriously. We can have happy clickers on anything. So make sure that we message that this is really to see how they're doing and where we can support or where we can extend their learning. I want to make sure you also know that IXL has a lot of skill plans, which are really exciting. They have us aligned to our TEKS, the highly assessed TEKS in reading and highly assessed TEKS in writing, according to TEA and STAR, ACT. And we have map growth recommendations as well for skill plans. And we have some even beyond that. So I'm going to go back. Let's see. I'm going to actually escape for a second. Already have pulled up the IXL plans. So if I'm under learning, under skill plans, right here, you'll see that there's the TEKS themselves, College and Career Readiness from Texas, but also if you are in elementary, benchmark Reader's Workshop is aligned. So you can use the skills plans here. And remember, we follow TEKS as our curriculum through TRS. So we don't purely use the whole unit, but since our pacing tools in elementary show which lessons are being used, you can go through and pull those and make a skills plan or use that skills plan. Units of study for writing is also loaded. And I'm going to keep on going down. Our TEACS resource system, they've just started loading, which is super exciting. And units of study for teaching reading. So you can pull actual skills that are being taught within the units of study, which are aligned to our TRS units. So this is all available as well. So I just want to make sure that you saw that. Go back into our present mode. So looking at this, kind of how it all would work, I try to do this bit of a timeline. So when we're starting the year, ideally, you are gathering your performance assessment start right away, and you're gathering information. There's reading inventories, writing inventories, setting up your readers and writers notebook. You go ahead and start the process of getting a reading log, maybe calculating a reading rate, and really getting to know your students. And that's also where we still begin where our mini lessons, we have them, expect them to transfer that into their readers or writers notebook in an application process. So this is all the beginning of the year. Then MAP came along around October, and it gives us beginning of the year projections of how students will do and predictions on how they'll perform on the state assessment. So it gives us a really good view of if they continue on the current path, that's what it's going to look like. IXL should happen either before the MAP, ideally, but this year it happened often after MAP. So get that initial diagnostic. That's why we need to get it now. And as we're going from the beginning of the year, so I'm going to jump on down, then we move to goal setting with our kids right after that. And this is performance assessments known as our ongoing. And these are always going to be directly tied to the mini lesson. So I'm bringing up the term DOLs because that demonstration of learning is daily, and they're tied to the lesson of the day. So that might be a short piece that they transfer, but sometimes they can be tied actually to the performance assessment because those are the same thing that you're doing. So you can have a lot of overlap. And the teacher model has a mini lesson, but an exemplar of the expectation for that demonstration of learning. Notice IXL is brought up over here now as well. Once we have the initial, it's ongoing. Every 1 to 2 weeks, about a 10-minute to 12, 15-minute session of the diagnostic. We'll keep it up to speed on the recommendations on the skill plan. And then, of course, around the quarter, we did it afterwards this year and the bigger window this year because of our launch being so delayed. And it measures the mastery of the essential standards across those TRS units. So the quarterly summative assessment comes in and gives us that data and information. Then we're continuing to go on. And then we do MAP again for middle of the year growth to see from these projections, have they stayed the same or have they grown? What has happened? So this is kind of how it all fits together. But notice even down here, my last piece is in the classroom. The PAs are going on, demonstrations of learning, and then the conferring to coach and collect information and data is a constant that's always going on in the classroom. So there's a lot of assessments happening that are informing day-to-day instruction. So those are the programs and those are the assessments. Actually, the one program is IXL that we talked about today, and the assessments and the purpose behind them. So I want you to pause here, go back to the Padlet, and make sure that you record any questions, comments, or connections about the assessments in language arts and the program IXL that's attached. And then you're going to come back. I'm sorry, and then at the Padlet, you're going to go ahead and do this as well because we're going to move into our second part, which is understand the teacher reflection on practice process and how it relates to improvement in Tier 1 instruction. And so I want you to go ahead and do your reflection on the QSA data reflection form that you learned about with Jacob this morning or at some point today or this week, and the one that you'll expect your teachers to do at the campus level.